it's my great pleasure to introduce the delegation of the year, which is only made of the executive board of the ESCRS. So thank you for the three of you guys to join me on the stage and to debate on this long-term follow-up. So that's my pleasure to introduce Thomas Conan, our treasurer, and Thomas will debate on the long-term after subtractive corneal surgeries, in other words, laser.
Beatrice, thank you very much. I think we start this session with subtractive corneal procedures, and the question is what happened to our patient in the long term. Here are my financial disclosures. I think relevant are all those companies we worked over the years for refractive corneal surgery. Now, if you look at the subtractive corneal procedures, you have seen this today. We start on the left side with surface ablation. Here I show you a transPRK procedure, which is now very popular in Europe. We have the lamellar procedures, which are LASIK and femtosecond LASIK. And we have also the lenticular extraction procedures, where you see that the lenticle is taken from the cornea. Now, when you look at subtractive corneal surgeries, you can see here a very simple schematic drawing where basically the central part of the cornea is taken away for subtraction in order to treat, in this case, myopia. And we do this with excimer lasers. We also do this with femtosecond lasers now with lamellar surgery. And you clearly can see here on this picture where we treated a patient for myopia that there are two changes. One is, if you look at the corneal curvature map here, that basically you flatten the cornea. You see here post-operatively for this myopic treatment, you have a flatter cornea by 5 to 6 diopters, and you also thin the cornea. This is 120 microns thinner than before, and that's basically subtractive corneal surgery. Now, I would like to go back to the recommendation of the German society here. This is the only German slide, but basically the summary comes here, application and limit range for 2019. We just updated them. And if you look at the different procedures, here is LASIK, surface ablation, and then the treatment of SMILE. You can see that just for myopia, I picked this up, we have a limit up to 8 diopters to treat. For the surface ablation up to -6 diopters, and for the SMILE procedures -1 to -8. And we also have the limits up to where we would not go over 10 diopters, 8 diopters, and again -8 to 10 diopters for the SMILE. Now look at the long-term outcome after subtractive corneal procedures. This is one very long-term study on PRK. Procedures were safe, no long-term complications. Predictability decreased actually between 1 and 18 years, so we had some regression, but the corrected distance visual acuity and the corneal transparency improved with time. If you see what I'm saying here is basically the Haze, and Haze is still a problem with surface ablation. You see a retrospective analysis of these 7,500 eyes, and the risk factors are summarized here: depth of ablation, surface quality, hyperopia treatments, astigmatism higher, LASIK was more than transPRK, UV light exposure, reoperations, systemic diseases, and age. And this can be a very severe Haze after the procedures. The transPRK is the next procedure we're doing more and more now. We have to be careful in doing for the really low amounts of the treatment, but basically there's not so much long-term data at the moment because it's a new procedure. We found the 18 months follow-up. 94% were in between 2020, 98 in the range of plus minus half a diopter. No eyes had Haze grade +2, so it was very effective and safe, and the improvement of the refraction and quality of vision was found. LASIK-update 2016, this is a nice paper. 19.7 LASIK studies were looked at for these parameters here. The loss of 2 or more lines was only found in 0.61. I think that's one of the most safest procedures we found in the world where we're treating patients, and that's true for refractive surgery. 1.2% of patients were dissatisfied with LASIK in these 97 article summary. That's a very high number, and we can be very proud of our treatments, basically. 10 years LASIK, just to look at the regression, And you look at this line here, from basically 5 to 10 years, there was a regression of 0.2, from 1 to 10 years of 0.91 diopters. Of course, it all depends on where you treat your patients. For high myopia, there's also some papers. Here, a number of 70 eyes. They found 5-year follow-up stable outcome. They found some increase in higher order aberrations, particularly for the high myopic patients. 15 years follow-up of high myopia, smaller group, 46% were within plus minus 1 diopter, 64% in between plus minus 2% the diopters of changing. So LASIK for high myopia was safe over a long time, but we found a significant myopic regression with time. If you look at the long-term refractive outcome, 2 papers on PRK versus LASIK, basically the PRK group -4, the LASIK group -3, and what basically showed is that LASIK showed a better stability than PRK between 6 to 9 years post-operatively. So there seems to be one factor here in this procedure. Also, PRK versus femtosecond LASIK, 100 eyes of 2-year follow-up, preoperative astigmatism and myopia was looked at. Better results for femtosecond LASIK in treatment of different degrees of astigmatism, and also superior in the uncorrected distance visual acuity for the femtosecond LASIK eyes. No significant difference of uncorrected distance visual acuity in both procedures. For SMILE, 5-year follow-up paper in the literature, 54 eyes, in between half a diopter, 93% of patients, plus minus 1 diopter, all of the patients, no patient lost corrected distant visual acuity in this 5-year follow-up paper, and the refractive results were stable at long term. Interesting outcome. If this paper is looked at critical, relax SMILE versus femtosecond laser, and you can see this here from this group, basically 400 eyes with femto, 1,192 with relax SMILE. Outcome were equally good, and they showed good predictability in this outcome here. Now, one final comment I would like to make on the refractive procedures on the cornea. We all know that post-refractive surgery, IOL calculation, we heard the keynote lecture from Dirk this morning on the IOL calculation. It's important to know this, that we have a less good predictability for all this, what we are doing then later for these patients, because we most likely will give them presbyopia correcting IOL in the later stage of their lives. Of course, we're working on the formulas, and of course this is improving, but if you compare this to the non-operated eyes, we see much better results with the patients who have not operated on the cornea. So in summary, take-home message, we do subtractive corneal surgeries. We take away tissue in all these 3 procedures here, PRK, transPRK, LASIK and femto-LASIK and SMILE. The procedures are very comparable in long term. You can see this here. Good predictability is found. Corneal thickness, of course, is decreasing. Complications are rare. If you see a vast majority of these procedures, we all fear of ectasia, and this was a whole session today on this, in order to make sure that we deselect those patients who are, can have ectasia. Small optical zone in high myopic patients, for example, takes care and should be done in other procedures. We will come to this point in the future on phakic IOLs. And finally, IOL calculation post-refractive surgery reduces the predictability for our procedure. With this, I thank you and for the invitation to the ESCRS. Thank you.